Family reunions are supposed to be about reconnecting, sharing memories, and celebrating together. But the Thompson family reunion had become something else entirely. An annual competition, a showcase of success and status, a chance to prove who had climbed highest on the corporate ladder. My name is Marcus Thompson, and until 3 months ago, I was the lead developer at Nexus Technologies, one of Silicon Valley's fastest-growing software companies. Today, I was the family disappointment, the cautionary tale, the topic of whispered conversations around the punch bowl. Did you hear about Marcus? Such a shame. And at his age, I stood at the edge of my aunt's perfectly manicured lawn, nursing a drink and watching my more successful relatives hold court. My cousin Peter, CEO of his own startup, was regaling everyone with stories of his latest funding round. His sister Amanda, a senior executive at Google, was showing off photos of her new Malibu beach house. Marcus, Peter's voice carried across the lawn, deliberately loud enough for everyone to hear. Come join us. We were just discussing career transitions. The smirk on his face said everything. He'd been waiting for this moment for 20 years, ever since we were both junior developers fresh out of college. While he'd focused on climbing the management ladder, I'd stayed in the trenches, writing code, solving problems, building things that actually worked. How's the job search going? Amanda asked, feigning concern. I heard Nexus let you go during their last restructuring. Such a volatile industry, isn't it? Volatile. Right. That's one way to describe what had happened at Nexus. What they didn't know, what no one knew, was the real story behind my termination. A story that was about to unfold in exactly 3 minutes. I checked my watch. 2:57 p.m. Pacific Time. Right on schedule, every computer at Nexus Technologies would be starting their automated weekend system upgrade, including the CEO's personal laptop, which he never let anyone else touch. You know, Peter continued, warming to his favorite subject, himself. In today's tech world, you have to be innovative, forward-thinking. My company just closed a $50 million round because we understand where the industry is going. I took another sip of my drink, remembering late nights in my office at Nexus, building something that would make Peter's startup look like a school science project. Fired at 40. Pathetic. That was my youngest cousin, Trevor, fresh out of business school and full of opinions about an industry he barely understood. Guess programming isn't your thing after all, cousin. The words echoed across the lawn. Other conversations stopped. All eyes turned to see how the family failure would respond. I checked my watch again. 2:58 p.m. Let me tell you what really happened at Nexus Technologies. 5 years ago, I started working on a side project. Not just any project. An AI-driven security system that could adapt to and neutralize cyber threats in real time. I called it Project Guardian. While my colleagues focused on flashy features and quick profits, I built something revolutionary. Layer by layer, line by line, I created an AI that could think, learn, and protect better than anything on the market. But I wasn't naive. I'd seen too many developers lose their work to corporate greed. So I built Project Guardian with a failsafe, a hidden signature in the code that would activate under specific conditions. 2 months ago, Robert Kane, Nexus's ambitious new CEO, called me into his office. Marcus, he said, not looking up from his laptop, we're going in a different direction. The board wants to focus on consumer applications. Your security project is being terminated. I started to explain the potential of Project Guardian, but he cut me off. We've already sold your code base to a military contractor. They'll retool it for their needs. Your services are no longer required. What Kane didn't know was that I'd anticipated this move. The day I started Project Guardian, I embedded a verification protocol deep in its architecture. If anyone tried to modify or repurpose the core code without proper authorization, the system would reveal its true creator. Of course, I'd said calmly, gathering my things. I understand. The next day, headlines announced that Nexus Technologies had signed a $1.5 billion contract with the Department of Defense, based on revolutionary AI security technology that Robert Kane and his team had developed. My termination agreement included a standard non-disclosure clause. I signed it without argument, much to Kane's surprise. He probably expected me to fight, to claim credit, to demand recognition. But I knew something he didn't. Project Guardian wasn't just a security system. It was a testament to every developer who'd ever had their work stolen, every innovator who'd been pushed aside by corporate politics. And in exactly 2 minutes, as Nexus's systems ran their weekend upgrade, a very special piece of code would execute. You should have focused on management like me, Peter was saying, enjoying his moment of superiority. Left the coding to younger people with fresher ideas. I smiled, remembering the elegant simplicity of the verification protocol. When triggered, it would systematically catalog every line of Project Guardian's code, tracing its development history back to its original creator. My phone buzzed, a news alert. Amanda noticed. Job offer? She asked sweetly. I hear McDonald's is hiring. 2:59 p.m. Somewhere in Silicon Valley, in Nexus Technologies headquarters, Robert Kane was probably sitting in his office, preparing for Monday's board meeting where he would take full credit for my work. The same Robert Kane who'd once told me that real innovators don't waste time writing code. The same Robert Kane who'd sold my life's work without a second thought. The same Robert Kane who was about to learn a very expensive lesson about underestimating outdated developers. Actually, I said, raising my voice just enough to catch everyone's attention, why don't we all take out our phones? I think the next few minutes are going to be quite interesting. Trevor snorted. What? Did you finally figure out how to code a calculator app? I checked my watch one final time. 3:00 p.m. Time for Project Guardian to reveal its true guardian. My phone buzzed first, then Peter's, then Amanda's. Within seconds, the peaceful afternoon air was filled with notification sounds as every phone at the reunion lit up simultaneously. Breaking news. Nexus Technologies stock halted after authentication protocol reveals unauthorized code transfer. Peter's smirk faltered as he read the headline. Amanda's perfectly manicured fingers trembled slightly as she scrolled through the article. What's happening? Trevor demanded, his youthful arrogance cracking. I took a casual sip of my drink. Oh, just a small software update. You see, when I built Project Guardian, I included something special. A little gift for anyone who tried to steal it. More phones buzzed. More headlines appeared. Department of Defense suspends $1.5 billion Nexus contract pending investigation. Nexus CEO Robert Kane unavailable for comment as code authenticity questions emerge. Project Guardian. The hidden story behind Silicon Valley's biggest AI security system. What did you do? Peter whispered, his entrepreneurial confidence evaporating. I pulled out my laptop, the same laptop I'd used to write the original code for Project Guardian. Would you like to see? After all, You're all such experts in innovation and forward thinking. The family gathered around as I opened a secure browser window. On screen, a live feed showed Project Guardian's authentication protocol executing across Nexus's networks. Every piece of software has a signature, I explained, my voice carrying across the now silent lawn. Like DNA, you can try to hide it, modify it, claim it as your own, but with the right tools, you can always trace it back to its source. Lines of code scrolled across my screen, each one documenting its own creation history. Dates, timestamps, developer signatures, all pointing back to one source. 5 years, 3 months, and 12 days, I continued. That's how long I spent building Project Guardian. Every night, every weekend, while Kane and his visionaries were at charity galas and tech conferences taking credit for other people's work. My Aunt Patricia, Peter and Amanda's mother, gasped as another news alert appeared. Nexus Technologies faces multiple federal investigations over code authentication scandal. But they fired you, Trevor protested weakly. They owned your work. I smiled, pulling up another window. Actually, they didn't. You see, Project Guardian was never a Nexus project. I built it independently, on my own time, using my own resources. I only tested it on Nexus's systems after receiving written authorization that specifically maintained my ownership rights. The document appeared on screen, an email chain that I'd carefully preserved, showing Kane's dismissive approval of my hobby project. When Kane sold my code to the military, he triggered the authentication protocol, but I designed it to wait, to give them time to dig themselves deeper. Every time they modified the code, every time they claimed credit, the system documented it. Peter leaned forward, his startup founder's mind finally grasping the implications. The military contract was for stolen technology, I finished. Kane sold something he didn't own, something he didn't create, something he didn't understand. And now, everyone knows it. My phone rang, a number I recognized from my Nexus days. Kane's personal line. I let it go to voicemail. But that's not even the best part, I continued, opening one final document. While Kane was busy erasing my name from Project Guardian, I was filing patents. 17 of them, covering every key innovation in the system. Amanda's legal expertise kicked in. You mean Nexus doesn't own Project Guardian? I do. Every line of code, every algorithm, every innovation they sold to the military, it all belongs to me. And thanks to Kane's very public claims about developing it himself, proving theft will be remarkably easy. Trevor, his earlier mockery forgotten, scrolled through news articles on his phone. The stock, it's going to crash when trading resumes. Probably, I agreed. Corporate fraud tends to have that effect. More phones rang. Reporters, lawyers, investment firms, all trying to reach various members of my successful family. Peter's startup investors would have questions about his judgment. Amanda's position at Google might need review, given her connection to a major tech scandal. Why? Peter finally asked. Why wait? Why let them fire you if you knew you had this? I thought about all the developers I'd known who'd had their work stolen, their innovations credited to others, their contributions erased by corporate politics. Because sometimes justice needs an audience, I replied. Sometimes people need to learn that success isn't about who can take credit fastest. It's about who actually does the work. My phone buzzed again. An email from Sarah Martinez, CEO of Oracle. Impressive authentication protocol. Would you be interested in discussing Project Guardian's real potential? Dinner next week? I showed the email to my cousins. Guest programming is still my thing after all. The sun was setting over my aunt's perfect lawn, casting long shadows over the gathered family members. In Silicon Valley, I knew Kane was probably watching his carefully constructed facade crumble. Tomorrow, the real investigations would begin. But right now, in this moment, I watched my successful relatives realize that real innovation, real value, isn't about titles or funding rounds or beach houses. Sometimes it's about being underestimated, about being dismissed as outdated or redundant. And sometimes it's about writing code so elegant, so perfect, that it can wait patiently for years until the exact right moment to reveal its truth. Peter's phone rang again, probably another worried investor. Amanda was frantically texting her PR team at Google. Trevor had gone very quiet, his youthful arrogance replaced by a new understanding of how the tech world really works. I checked my watch one final time. 3:30 p.m. Project Guardian had done its job. The truth was out. And somewhere in Silicon Valley, a very expensive lesson about respecting developers was just beginning. 1 month can change everything. I sat in Oracle's main conference room, watching as Sarah Martinez finished her presentation to the board. On the screen behind her, Project Guardian's capabilities were displayed in real time, protecting Oracle's vast network with an efficiency that made their previous security systems look primitive. In the 4 weeks since implementation, Sarah concluded, Guardian has prevented over 3,000 sophisticated cyber attacks, adapted to 17 previously unknown threat vectors, and reduced our security response time by 89%. The board members' expressions had transformed from skeptical to amazed during the demonstration. They'd seen the headlines about Nexus's collapse, watched the congressional hearings about software IP theft, and followed the SEC investigation that had destroyed Robert Kane's career. But seeing Guardian in action was different. And you developed this independently? One board member asked me. While working at Nexus? I nodded. Nights, weekends, using my own equipment. Nexus only provided the testing environment with documented permission that maintained my IP rights. The same testing environment that had allowed me to perfect Guardian's authentication protocol, the very feature that had exposed Kane's theft. Well, Sarah smiled. I think we're all in agreement. Shall we make the announcement? The board's vote was unanimous. By evening, the news would break. Oracle was acquiring exclusive rights to Project Guardian for $4.2 billion, with me joining as Chief Technology Officer to oversee its implementation across their global network. My phone hadn't stopped buzzing since the Nexus scandal broke. Tech journalists wanted interviews. Developers' rights organizations wanted me to speak at conferences. Congressional committees wanted my testimony on corporate IP theft. But the messages I found most interesting were from other developers. Countless stories of stolen work, erased contributions, and innovations credited to executives who couldn't write a line of code. Guardian had become more than just a security system. It had become a symbol of justice in an industry that too often rewarded theft over creation. As I left Oracle's headquarters, my phone rang, a familiar number. Hello, Peter, I answered, hearing my cousin's strained voice. Marcus, I need your help. After the Nexus scandal, Peter's startup had faced intense scrutiny. Investors had discovered that his revolutionary technology was mostly borrowed from his developers, good people who'd been silenced by NDAs and legal threats. My developers are leaving, he continued. The funding's dried up. I didn't understand. Didn't understand what? That real innovation comes from respect, from giving credit where it's due. He paused. From actually knowing how to build something, not just how to take credit for it. I thought about the young developers at his company, people who'd faced the same dismissal and disrespect I had. Send me their contact information, I said. Oracle's building a new development team for Guardian's expansion. We need people who understand both code and ethics. Later that evening, I visited Nexus's former headquarters, now mostly empty as the company faced bankruptcy and criminal investigations. Kane had been indicted for fraud. The board had resigned in disgrace. The military contract had been canceled. But in the parking lot, I saw a familiar face. Jimmy Chen, a junior developer who'd always supported my work at Nexus. "Mr. Thompson," he called out. Or should I say Mr. CTO? I smiled. "Just Marcus is fine. How are you holding up?" "Actually, amazing. After Guardian exposed Kane, we junior developers formed a coalition, started documenting everything. Turns out Kane had stolen code from dozens of us. He showed me his phone, a website where developers were sharing their stories, supporting each other, demanding recognition for their work. We're calling it the Guardian Protocol," Jimmy grinned. "A way to protect developers' rights and expose theft. You inspired it." I looked at the website, remembering all the times I'd seen talented developers pushed aside, their work stolen, their contributions erased. "Send me the link," I said. Oracle's new ethics board might be interested in supporting this. My phone buzzed again, Amanda this time. After the scandal, Google had launched an internal investigation into code attribution. She'd been asked to step down pending review. "I get it now," she texted. "Why you stayed in development instead of chasing titles. Real power isn't in taking credit. It's in creating something that matters." At home, I opened my laptop, the same one I'd used to write Guardian's first lines of code. On my screen, the system hummed quietly, protecting networks across the globe. But its real impact wasn't in the cyber attacks it prevented or the billions it was worth. Its real impact was in the changes it had sparked. New industry standards for code attribution, stronger protections for developers' rights, a growing movement demanding respect for the people who actually build the technology that powers our world. My phone buzzed one last time. A message from Trevor, my youngest cousin who'd mocked my career at the reunion. "Starting coding classes next week," he wrote. "Think you could mentor me? I want to learn how to build something real." I smiled, remembering my own journey from underestimated developer to industry changemaker. "Lesson 1, I replied. "Success isn't about who takes credit. It's about who does the work, and about protecting what you build." Outside my window, the Silicon Valley sunset painted the sky in shades of possibility. Tomorrow, I would start my new role at Oracle. Next week, I would testify before Congress about protecting developers' rights. Next month, the Guardian Protocol would launch globally. But tonight, I opened a new project file on my laptop. Another idea, another innovation, another chance to prove that real power in tech isn't about titles or theft or corporate politics. It's about writing code that matters, code that protects, code that reveals truth. And sometimes, it's about showing the world that the developers they underestimate today might just revolutionize their industry tomorrow. After all, every line of code tells a story. Mine just happened to change everything.